morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Alyssa Knight and Brian Thorne webinar. We appreciate you joining us today. Hopefully you've had your first cup of coffee and staying healthy and safe in this this pandemic world we're living in today. We're going to be learning about MITRE SHIELD today. We're going to be learning about more about deception technology. I don't know if many of you saw the article that I published on LinkedIn called Liars and Saints, but it's a series that I've started on deception technology, talking about MITRE SHIELD and what active defense is. So we're going to be talking about that today and learning more about that. And just in true form, just like all my other webinars, I do want to make the disclaimer, this is not a sales-inar, meaning that we aren't the typical vendor that's going to lure you into this this webinar and really just try and secretly sort of try and sell you something. So with that being said, sorry, I've got someone blowing me up with text messages right now. In any case, we're going to be learning about that, and yeah, so let's go ahead and start the show. So Caroline, if you'll go ahead and bring my content live, I will go ahead and get started here. Oh, I think I need to actually share. That would probably help, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Stop sharing. Open share tray. All right, cool. Awesome sauce. Okay, so you guys know who Brian Thorne is. We're an MSSP. We're awesome. And that's pretty much the only selling I'll be doing today. Who the F am I? I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started and sold multiple cybersecurity startups over the last few decades. I'm a recovering hacker, so I've been doing this for a while. I started out as a penetration tester. Near the latter half of my career, I've really begun focusing more on hacking embedded systems. So connected cars and CCTV cameras. I like to focus on embedded systems. I'm the CEO of Brian Thorne. I'm also a partner at Knight Inc., M&A Knight Holdings, M&A Knight Capital, M&A Knight Entertainment. My family, we have this family office and family of companies all doing these different things. I'm also a day trader. So I'm a multifaceted person. I'm pretty much doing everything. I don't like to be bored, obviously. I am a published author. I recently published a new book on hacking connected cars. If you haven't grabbed your copy yet, please definitely do so. Go to Amazon.com and plug in my name or hacking connected cars and you'll pull up the book. Happy to sign people's copies. I am a content creator and a content marketer and a cybersecurity influencer. So there's this new thing of influencers specifically within cybersecurity. I'm one of them. If you haven't yet, definitely pull me up on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, smash that bell icon, and also follow me on Twitter. So that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about myself. All right, so let's talk about MITRE. MITRE is an FRDC, and what an FRDC is, it's a FFRDC. It's a federally funded research and development center. Basically, MITRE is a nonprofit. It's not a for-profit corporation. It was originally founded in 1958, and sorry, my phone's blowing up. MITRE was founded in 1958, whose mission was to support U.S. government agencies through research and development. They basically do R&D for the government. That's what it really boils down to. In 2013, they published the MITRE attack framework, which all of you hopefully have heard of by now. It really became a household name around 2013, 2014. And then you went to conferences back when conferences existed before COVID, and you would see these vendors with, an alignment of their product to the MITRE attack framework. This is where we fit within the MITRE attack framework, because a lot of CISOs, a lot of decision makers were identifying gaps in their security control framework and positioning their product, looking for products in that gap. So, whether it was network detection response, endpoint detection response, firewalls, whatever it may be, they were using and still to this day are using the attack framework to determine gaps in their controls. So a lot of vendors followed suit, and you would go to security conferences and you would see them putting it on their booth, redesigning their booths and putting everything about MITRE ATT&CK. And you still see vendors doing that today. You see breach and attack simulation solutions doing that. You see a lot of these products that are positioning their wares somewhere in the attack framework. So it's really become this litmus test for cybersecurity vendors to align their products to, as well as defenders to perform gap analysis using in order to determine what they need to buy. What are they missing in order to defend against a specific technique, right? So that, in a nutshell, is who MITRE is. It's not a company you can buy products from. They basically do R&D and publish research. And honestly, I've never in the last 20 years seen anything stick like the attack framework has. We've seen NIST CSF, which I'm going to be doing a webinar shortly about as well. Actually, right after this webinar. We see these other frameworks, CSP, all these things, but nothing's really stuck like attack framework has. It's really had staying power since it was published. And it's continuing to be developed. So what is SHIELD? SHIELD was published by the same organization, by MITRE, and like the attack framework, it's a matrix. It's a matrix of tactics, techniques, and procedures designed for defenders and how to instrument their network for active defense. So you're probably wondering, okay, Alyssa, what the heck is active defense? It's not what you might think. Your mind probably will immediately go to, well, it's counterattack, it's hacking back. No, not really. It's basically not making your assets sitting ducks and just sitting there waiting for adversaries to attack it. And it's basically this concept that you take an active security posture against the adversary once they establish a beachhead. Once they establish their beachhead on their network. I want to emphasize that, because in 2020, really, I think the concept of intrusion prevention really is an old mindset. It's an old way of thinking. We are not going to be able to prevent ourselves from being breached. It will happen, and it's just a matter of lowering that mean time to detection and mean time to response. So what controls can you implement in order to quickly and effectively detect it and respond? SHIELD is the product of 10 years of MITRE analysis into adversarial maneuvers against their networks. So what MITRE did was, for about a decade, was studying the techniques used by adversaries and the compromise of their own enterprise network. And that's really what the SHIELD is. It's a byproduct of that research and trying to determine what they were doing once they established a foothold. And I want all of you to tell me in chat what it was. What was the main thing that they noticed that all adversaries do once they establish their beachhead? Anyone? Can anyone tell me? Everyone had enough coffee? What did they do once they established that beachhead? Okay, I'll go ahead and spoil it. Spoiler alert. Maneuvering. They maneuvered. They pivoted. They moved laterally within the network. They identified assets. They collected and harvested credentials. They maneuvered. So, really what SHIELD is, if you look at it from a high-level perspective, it's really this matrix to use decoy technology, among other things, to identify pivoting. It basically arms defenders with this new concept where you're basically employing limited offensive actions and counterattacks to deny your network to adversaries. So and one of the things that a lot of you may not know is the Department of Defense, as well as the Chinese military, have used this for the last century. It's not a cybersecurity thing. It's very much a traditional battlefield sort of tactic or strategy, where you're pretty much just making sure that you're making the adversary think they're attacking real assets. So we're going to be talking about decoy technology and how it's used to fool attackers into thinking that they're in the real world instead of a synthetic environment. And recently they've coupled it with MITRE ATT&CK. So MITRE took ATT&CK and they took SHIELD, and they've actually coupled them together to form a more complete picture between adversarial tactics and techniques. So this is actually what it is. This is what it looks like. You've got, just like the, I'm pointing at my screen as if you guys can see me, but you have these tactics across the top, which are the columns. You've got channel, collect, contain, detect, disrupt, facilitate, legitimize, and test. And we'll talk about that. And then in the rows are all the techniques, right? So using decoy accounts, using decoy networks, detonating malware, just all of these things in order to achieve this overall active defense posture. So in short, tactics are really denoting what the defender is trying to accomplish. So, you're trying to accomplish a channel, which is basically leading the adversary down a path that you want them to go, right? Using breadcrumbs. And techniques are describing how the defense achieves the tactics. So it's very similar. If you're familiar with the attack framework, it's very similar to that. So let's talk about the individual tactics, because this is really important for all of you to understand. So channeling is basically a container of techniques, and each tactic can be considered like a container or a bucket that guides an adversary down a specific path away from your production system using decoys. So this could be synthetic files, synthetic credentials, synthetic systems that fools the adversary into port mapping, scanning, grabbing credentials for a fake system that's not real. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, oh, Alyssa, I remember this. This is honeypots. This is the HoneyNet project from 20 years ago. It's a lot more than that. And actually, if you talk to some of the vendors that create decoy technology, like Elusive Networks, which I think are a bunch of cool cats, really cool technology. You guys will have to check it out. I'll talk more about that. But a lot of them really don't like to be called honeypots because they do so much more than a honeypot, right? It's not just a deception system, and we'll talk about that shortly. But basically, you're leading the adversary down a path away from your actual systems. Collection or collect is basically you gather information about the adversary specifically to learn their TTPs and the tools they use. So let's say, for example, you find some custom ransomware or custom malware on your network. It's the idea of taking that malware and reversing it and understanding how it works and understanding what the adversary was thinking and what they're targeting and what they're going after. So it's really learning more about them. It's more of a counterintelligence sort of tactic. Containment is really the employment of techniques to limit the adversary to confined space. So like an enclave, a specific enclave within your network that does not include production systems, limiting their potential to move around. This is the idea. It's basically antithetical to the concept of a flat network. It's creating these micro segments within your network, whether you're using a solution from Unisys, software-defined microsegmentation, something like that, or just using backholes, creating these individual VLAN segments, and using backholes or firewall rules to limit where the adversary can pivot once they've established their beachhead. Next is detection. It's leveraging network detection and response, NDR and EDR, to lower that MTTD. Once the adversary has established that beachhead, how quickly can you identify them? So you can quickly isolate them, isolate that machine, quickly take it off the network, so you're really disrupting their ability to pivot and actually go after real systems. And then there's disruption. This technique basically is used to make life more difficult, to practically impossible, by using layers of different security controls. Remember that whole concept of castle and moat security, where all of your data is in this one single system or one single file share, and you're building security controls around that. Those days are gone. It's it's really more of an upside down castle mentality where your data is everywhere. It's in the cloud, it's on tablets, it's on mobile phones. And those of you defending APIs, your edge has moved to every single mobile phone out there. So the idea of disruption is you're basically using this layered defense model to use these different technologies to really piss off the adversary, really make it difficult for them to discern between the synthetic environment and the real environment. Facilitation. So you're basically enabling the adversary to successfully complete part or all of their objectives. Make them happy, make them excited, make them think that they've established their beachhead and they've got full control of all your production systems, when in fact it's a synthetic environment. You're allowing them to spread their wings and upload their tools and collect and harvest credentials, and maybe encrypt and leak, lock and leak. So apply custom ransomware, whatever it may be, and Ragnarok or whatever, and lock your files, but they're decoy files, and you're letting them think that they've done their job, and they've left your network, and they're sending you ransom emails hoping you'll pay all those Bitcoins, which is currently trading at about $19,000 for a single Bitcoin. But you're basically creating this controlled environment for them to work within. Legitimize. This is really, again, just to add authenticity to your synthetic environment created by deception technology. You've got efforts by them to collect Kerberos golden tickets, credentials in the SAM hive. It basically, again, gives more legitimacy to your synthetic environment using technologies like elusive networks. So what is deception technology? What exactly is it? So again, it's I don't even want to say a honeypot on steroids. It's so much more than that. When you have systems like elusive, where they have this concept of like dissolving agents, right? I don't work for elusive, so I just want to make that clear. And even Brian Thorne is not a reseller of elusive. We might be in the future, but we're not right now. So I don't get any kind of like commission by telling you guys. It's just a really cool technology. For those of you who know me, know me as an influencer, if I put my name on something, it's something you should probably look at. So deception technology is basically a relatively new product category. And I think historically CISOs sort of saw deception technology as this nice to have. And I really feel like that's changed. I really feel like deception technology is more of a need to have. It's not really that vitamin anymore. It's more of the pill. It's basically now become this high fidelity detection system where the days of snort and IDS rules are gone, and everyone's kind of moving to this machine learning style of detection. And really, if you think about it, what is a more effective detection system to identify pivoting and lateral movement within your environment than a decoy system, decoy breadcrumbs, baiting the adversary away from production systems to really detect that you have a real adversary in your network without false positives. I mean, this is, you're setting these mouse traps, if you will. You're laying these breadcrumbs, and anything taking those breadcrumbs, anything interacting with that synthetic environment is most likely not going to be a false positive. Why would a legitimate employee be interacting with your synthetic environment? So I've never said anything is zero false positive, but this is pretty damn close. Deception technology is now being adopted to really improve that detection and deterrence. Again, really look at it as this lateral movement detection system. it's just so much more than attracting adversaries to this system that you've set up. And actually, elusive, there's this, it's optional to even deploy a deception, essential deception system. There's so much more to it, so many more layers to it that you need to consider, such as your attack surface management capability, and we'll talk about that in other articles and webinars. But much of the tactics defined in Shield are achieved using deception technology. So you've got decoy accounts. So you'll even have an Active Directory forest and an AD environment where you'll have decoy accounts in there, decoy content. Maybe you've got decoy PDF files, decoy credentials, decoy networks, decoy personas, decoy processes, decoy systems, decoy diversity. So you have all of this synthetic stuff to really make the world that they're living in look real, right? But it's really synthetic. It's making the synthetic world look more like the real world, and really making it difficult for them to discern between what's reality and what isn't. It's a really sexy technology. It's really cool. So that's it. No death by PowerPoint. I like to keep a lot of my webinars more interactive and more conversational. So I will hand the microphone back to my colleague Caroline to discuss Q&A and go over any questions you guys might have. And remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Ask me anything. Let's nerd out on deception, technology, active, defense, and shield.
Yeah, definitely, Alyssa. So I know that Aaron has been monitoring our Q&A section. So Aaron, would you mind starting us out with our first question?
Yeah, our first question is by Anonymous. Come on, guys, don't be shy. Again.
Girls, there could be girls.
Oh, girls, of course, yeah. So first question is, to what do you credit the success of MITRE?
What do I'm sorry, repeat the question? What do I credit what?
The success of MITRE.
Of MITRE? Oh, that's a good question. I think just the cutting edge research that they do. I mean, to have an organization that's not for profit doing nothing but, just 24 hours a day, just researching adversarial behavior, adversarial analysis, and publishing research on it, and publishing frameworks around it. And I'm such a big strategist. I'm always plagiarizing the quote from Abraham Lincoln: "If I had 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 6 hours sharpening my axe." I'm a big believer in planning and strategy before tactician. And, I love that about MITRE. They're very strategic. A lot of the things that come out of there is really bleeding edge, cutting edge research. And I think it helps make us better defenders. The adversaries have so much money and so much time and, just so many different attempts at trying to breach our networks, and they only have to get it right once, and we have to get it right all the time, right? So I think their success is really attributed to the critical thinking that goes on at that organization, and the products, the brainchilds that come out of that.
I think Anonymous number 2 answered the question saying lateral movement. Maybe that's another way to see it.
I think it was during your open-ended questions that you said, "Hey guys, jump in." I think they did, but probably a little bit delayed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if lateral movement was an answer to the first question, but or if it's just something you want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, lateral movement. Look, it's huge. I mean, look, I think it's stupid to focus on detection of specific attacks, right? Like, let's think about for a minute. The military isn't identifying enemies of the state for those who want to do the United States harm by the type of bullets they use. That's ridiculous. We don't have bullet detection systems. We don't have, missile detections. What we, oh, that's not an enemy unless they're using a specific missile that we know about. That's ridiculous. And if you think about it, over the last, like 20 years ago, that's what we were doing. We were using intrusion detection system signatures to identify specific exploits. We were using antivirus DAT files to identify specific viruses. That's stupid. I mean, you change one line in the code and it renders the signature useless. You encrypt the payload and it renders the ID signature useless. The idea is completely asinine to me. I think what we need to do is we need to embrace this idea that instead of looking for specific tools and specific exploits, we need to look for specific behaviors. And that's what I love about lateral movement detection is you're not betting the bank in your job on being able to keep up with the tools and the ransomware and the malware that the adversaries are creating. You're looking for that one go-to that every adversary uses as a technique once they breach your network. And that's what, everyone? Lateral movement, and yeah, so anyway, I love that. I love that about lateral movement. Anyway, I think that's what we need. I think everything needs to go around lateral. Because what adversary breaches a network and just sits there, right? Doesn't look for data, doesn't look for other systems, doesn't look for email. It's stupid. Like they move around, they touch systems, they collect stuff. That's just their technique.
Okay, next question by Joanna. In disruption, you mentioned deception technology. What are some examples of this?
So in disruption, I mentioned detection technology. So there's, deception. So do you want some examples of deception technology or detection technology?
Deception technology.
Okay, so I have to say hands down, I have looked at so for those of you who don't know me, I also run a content marketing firm called Night Inc. And so I work with cybersecurity vendors to create content for them. And so I've looked at a lot of really cool deception technology. I can tell you, and full disclaimer, they are a client of Night Inc. But so I've had the chance to drive the mouse, drive the keyboard, and play with their tech. It's cool. It's cool. I mean, not trying to sound like Jim Cramer here on on stocks, but it's cool. I gotta say I'm very bullish on Elusive. So what's different about Elusive Networks, really, I think their secret sauce and a lot of things that really make it so sexy is their attack surface management capability to really understand your surface. The idea that they aren't about just kind of sitting there hoping that the adversary will find your deception system and play with it in your production environment like a traditional honeypot. They actively deceive, right? They have these, and I gotta say, I've never heard of anything like this. They have this concept of a dissolvable agent. And so what it does is it actually logs into your production system, creates and sets the decoy breadcrumbs, and then self-destructs. It's the craziest thing in the world. I've never heard of it. And the neat thing about Elusive was that it was actually created by nation-state hackers for the Israelis. So it's an Israeli startup. Actually, there's a lot of really sexy technology, cybersecurity technology, coming out of Israel. I don't know what's in the water over there, but they're creating some really cool stuff. And so these guys actually worked for the Mossad, worked for Israeli special forces, and in their cyber warfare unit, and started this company. And it's a cool thing. You guys need to look at it. You guys and gals need to look at it. If I were the CISO for an organization, I honestly would make sure that in my layers of detection solutions that I have decoy technology there, and I would adopt Elusive. I just think it's the best in the market. I think it's the best out there. It's cool stuff.
Cool. It sounds kind of like the way you describe the technology sounded like between future and fantasy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's seriously like Hollywood movie stuff, right? Like an agent that self-destructs. It's like, what's that Tom Cruise movie where he's a spy? It's like this
Mission Impossible.
Self-destruct. Yeah, between Mission
Impossible script. But it is. It's a thing. Definitely take a test drive of their solution. It's really cool. It actually will create fake credentials. So if I were a hacker, and they have this quote where they've never lost a red team exercise. So if I were a hacker and I establish a beachhead on your network, as soon as I started dumping credentials, it would dump fake credentials created by the system. So they're not real credentials, and those credentials link to fake systems. And so you look at the hacker looks at the credentials, looks at the IP addresses and systems, and like, oh, these are machines I can pivot to, and then those are actual decoys. So it really creates this fake world within the real world of your network. It's insane. It's totally insane. I'm telling you, this is the next purple unicorn to go public. I'm not stuck. Do it. But yeah.
Okay, let's follow up with George/Jorge, depending on your Spanish or English. All of the products now subscribe to MITRE frameworks. I think I pronounced wrong the name.
MITRE framework, yeah.
MITRE frameworks, and even go through evaluations. How effective do you consider these evaluations, and what do you recommend for consumers to take into account in selective product based on these evaluations?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I agree with you. I think frameworks are ever evolving. And they should be. They shouldn't be. They should be living documents. And it's going to continue to evolve. So will shields. So will the attack. Because as new techniques are adopted by adversaries, now you've got these ransomware crime syndicates, which I'm about to publish a report on, that are targeted now. They call it human-centric ransomware, or big game hunters, like Grim Spider, who are making hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry now. And so these should be evolving. They should be getting better and changing. So, I think what you need to do when you're evaluating the adoption of technology is don't look at it as throwing money at the problem. Like, oh, machine learning is the next big thing. I don't have anything powered by ML. I should go buy it. Oh, dark trace, I should have that. Oh, I definitely don't think you should be using legacy antivirus anymore. You should definitely be using EDR. But, I just really don't believe you should throw money at the problem. You should have a cybersecurity program, right? You should have a program, whether it's ISO 27001 or whatever, NIST, whatever you do, have a program. And, you should understand what your high-risk assets are. Like, you can't protect what you don't know you have, right? Do a risk assessment. What are your high-risk assets? And then build your security controls like layers of an onion around that, right? So if your data is living in workloads in the AWS cloud or Azure cloud, find them, do a risk assessment, find your high-risk assets, and protect those. You can't secure everything. You are not going to secure everything. Your network is no longer an intranet anymore. It's an everywhere net. It's on people's mobile devices and in the cloud. I think you should definitely be able to detect the techniques in the attack framework. And as it evolves, definitely reevaluate your security controls and make sure that you have the ability to detect this. When you go to a vendor's website, whether it's breach and attack simulation or deception or EDR or NDR, they will show you on their website, and shame on any vendor that doesn't have any MITRE attack stuff on it. They will show you what techniques in the attack model they detect. So make sure that you do have that full coverage. But at the same time, that shouldn't be the end all and be all. There is no silver bullet in security. Make sure that you are actually aligning yourself against a path, that you have that GPS on, your Annex A controls and ISO 27001, or your NIST CSP controls, whatever it may be. And then create your KPIs and measure yourself against them. Have the number of ransomware infections gone down? Have the number of clickbaits gone down? Have the number of beachheads gone down? So those are the things that you want to track and report on regularly. It just, unfortunately, it's just not about the attack framework. It's so much more than that.
Nice. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
Silence, Aaron. I'm silent.
We have another one from Joanna. It says, the implementation of decoy networks will be ideal, but not often possible. What would you recommend as a starting point for companies starting to shift into MITRE SHIELD-based strategies?
Ooh. So if the organization, for some reason, is it a monetary thing? Like, is it a budget thing? Then, you do have open source tools like, Honeybee. I don't know if it's being maintained anymore, but you do have open source deception systems that are available if you don't have the budget to buy. You could also, there's a number of white papers on creating, Gen 2 honeynets using virtual machines, virtual environments. You can try and do it yourself. I would highly recommend against it because they need to be maintained, and you're basically luring hackers, adversaries to really these man traps. And it needs to be continuously monitored, and making sure that you're not luring people into their network and then giving them the ability to pivot around within your network. Of course, you can create dummy credentials on your own in Active Directory and monitor for people attempting to use it. That's actually a cool idea. Yeah, I mean, like, alert on someone trying to use a fake account, right? So create some fake accounts, maybe some fake shadow admin accounts, I don't know. And then don't assign them to anybody, and then just, if someone attempts to use, or if you see like some failed authentication attempts for those fake accounts, there you go, right? You have credential stuffing, or you have ATO. So that's probably a big thing, and that won't cost any money. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it'd be really neat. I need to talk to the Elusive folks about some sort of freemium model, maybe for those who don't have the budget. That's not a bad idea. But yeah, I mean, there's probably different things you could set up on your own. But again, be really careful. You're playing with fire if you're not using a commercial off-the-shelf solution to achieve something like that.
Let's say budget is not the problem. It's more of they want a second option. Is there any other way they can go?
Oh, you would need something that has the capability to deploy decoy breadcrumbs on the network and decoy technology. I mean, it would be a decoy system. It would be deception technology. I would imagine the only other alternative to deception technology is just trying to do it yourself, and using a hodgepodge of different open source tools. Which isn't a bad thing if you don't have the budget. I mean, but I mean, if it's not a budget thing and you just want an alternative to deception technology, I guess it would be a bunch of manual stuff.
Got it. Is there any more questions? Come on, guys, we have time.
I believe that is the last question that we have so far. On the other point with Joanna, I think I agree, Alyssa. A lot of these are like Shield is based on active response, obviously.
Right.
And so a lot of this will happen in the tool, but there are some measures, albeit maybe not so effective or flashy, that users can take or companies can take. Like you mentioned, the account creation. There's a bunch of other things that you could do more traditionally, perhaps. But I think ultimately the mindset here is trying to veer from passive to active. So if we can take those small steps, you'll see that impact, and you'll be able to detect and disrupt a little bit more for your threat landscape, right? So you'll be able to shift, even if it's small. It's a little shift in the strategy, and slowly but surely you can start shifting your company's approach to this.
Yeah, and it's really the idea of not being a sitting duck, right? And I think in the Liars and Saints article, there's actually an image of this tank that was created by this defense contractor, which employs this idea or concept of active defense, where it has an active defense system that actually prevents. It's actually on a tank, and this is a real tank, and it basically, instead of just being a sitting duck, because tanks are really slow, right? They can't maneuver. Right? They can't maneuver quickly. It was really easy because they moved so slow. They were sitting ducks. If anything were to come along and just bomb them. So this active defense concept in a traditional battleground, in traditional battle space on land, sea, and air, was this idea that it's got this active defense system that would destroy the missile before it actually hits the tank. So the same concept is really applied to active defense in cyber, right? It's the idea that you're not sitting, your systems, your servers aren't sitting there like sitting ducks, and you're sitting there hoping, crossing your fingers, that the NDR or EDR solution will see the beachhead, or see the attack, or see the exploit, or see the payload, or the shell code. That you're actively baiting the adversary into an environment that you have more control over. Then the other neat thing about solutions like Elusive is they have this forensic module where you can actually where it'll actually log into systems and pull forensic data from it if you're in the middle of an incident response case. So there's a lot of different layers to it, but I think hopefully that answers your question, Joanna. I think trying to achieve it outside of that is again probably going to be a series of manual things that could very easily bite you if you're not using an all-in-one, shrink-wrapped solution that would give you that capability.
Awesome. So it looks like those were all the questions for today. So any final thoughts, Alyssa?
Just keep attending our webinars. This is a great opportunity for you to learn about new defensive tactics and techniques as they're published, and as more brainchilds come out of MITRE and similar organizations, and even just research out there. Follow me on social media, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you guys have or girls have after this webinar. We're constantly having to keep up with adversaries. It's a game of cat and mouse and leapfrog, and it's hopefully free webinars like this and the papers and articles that I publish and videos I publish on things like this that will hopefully make you better defenders in your job. So thank you for joining us today, and join us in our next event.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining. As mentioned, this will be available after our webinar. If you want to share, or if you just want to revisit it, feel free to do so, and check out our social channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the good stuff. Thank you again.
MSSP, check out Brian Thorne.
And you can contact me for that.
Yeah. Commercial, brianthorne.com. Yeah, so that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, and happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everyone.